The sun was setting over Indianapolis as fans poured into the arena. Tonight was the big game everyone had been talking about for weeks. The Indiana Fever was playing against the Chicago Sky, and people couldn't stop buzzing about the matchup between Nalyssa Smith and Caitlin Clark. They were the two rising stars that had basketball fans glued to their TV screens all season. Nalyssa Smith wiped the sweat from her brow as she laced up her shoes in the locker room. She could hear the crowd growing louder outside. Her teammates chatted nervously around her, but she stayed quiet, focused. This game meant everything to her. The pressure had been building for months. The team owners expected wins. The fans demanded greatness. The sports channels constantly compared her stats to Clark's, creating a rivalry that felt forced and uncomfortable. "You good?" her teammate asked, noticing how tightly Smith was tying her shoes. "Never better," she replied, forcing a smile. Truth was, she wasn't good. She hadn't been sleeping well. Her phone was filled with messages from her agent about endorsement, deals that would vanish if her performance slipped. Her social media notifications had exploded with both praise and criticism. Some days the weight of it all made it hard to breathe. When the team ran out onto the court, the lights seemed brighter than usual. The crowd roared as the announcer called out the players' names. Smith high-fived her teammates mechanically, her eyes landing on Clark, who was warming up on the other side of the court. The rookie was smiling, waving to fans, looking completely at ease. Something about that smile made Smith's stomach twist. The first quarter started strong for both teams. Smith scored 8 points right away, threading perfect passes to her teammates and blocking 2 of Clark's shots. The crowd loved it, chanting Smith's name after a particularly impressive layup. For those moments, she remembered why she loved this game. But then things began to shift. Clark seemed to find her rhythm, sinking three-pointers like they were nothing. The crowd's energy changed, their cheers growing louder for the visiting team's star. With each basket Clark made, Smith felt herself growing tenser. "Don't let her get in your head," her coach warned during a timeout. "Play your game, not hers." Smith nodded, but the words didn't sink in. By halftime, they were down by 4 points. In the locker room, she sat apart from her teammates, replaying every mistake in her head while the coach drew up new plays. The third quarter was physical. Bodies crashed against each other as both teams fought for control. Smith took an elbow to the ribs that the referee missed. She bit her lip and kept playing, the pain fueling her. When she managed to steal the ball from Clark and score, the satisfaction felt almost healing. "That's what I'm talking about," her coach shouted from the sideline. With 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Smith was finally finding her groove again. The score was tied. The fans were on their feet. This was basketball at its best, competitive, challenging, but fair. Then came the fourth quarter. Clark set a screen that nobody saw coming. Smith ran directly into it, the impact knocking her off her feet and sending her sprawling onto the hardwood floor. The referee called it a clean play. The crowd erupted in a mix of boos and cheers. Smith felt her face flush hot with embarrassment as she pushed herself up. The pain in her ribs flared. She could hear someone in the stands yelling, "Get up and play." Everything seemed to blur around the edges. The lights, the noise, the pressure of the last few months. It all crashed down at once. During the next time out, something inside her snapped. While the teams gathered around their coaches, Smith broke away. She walked directly toward Clark, who had her back turned, talking to her coach. There was no plan, no thought, just pure emotion driving her forward. "Smith, get back here," her coach called out, but his voice seemed distant. She reached Clark and shoved her hard from behind. Clark never saw it coming. She went flying forward, crashing into the scorer's table with a sickening thud. Equipment scattered. People shouted. A water cooler toppled over. The arena went silent for what felt like forever. Clark lay still. Medical staff rushed onto the court from both benches. Smith stood frozen, the reality of what she'd done hitting her all at once. "What were you thinking?" Her teammate grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward their bench. But Smith couldn't answer. She couldn't take her eyes off Clark, who was now sitting up slowly as trainers examined her. The look of shock and pain on Clark's face told the whole story. Security personnel moved toward Smith. Her coach was already talking hurriedly with the officials. From the stands came shouts and boos. Someone threw a cup that landed at her feet, ice and soda splashing her shoes. "Get her out of here," someone yelled from the crowd. As Smith was escorted off the court, the magnitude of her actions began to sink in. This wasn't just a technical foul or an ejection. One moment of lost control might have just changed the course of her entire career. The worst part wasn't the angry faces in the crowd or the disappointment from her teammates. It was the knowledge that when she stepped off that court, the real battle was just beginning. The aftermath. The morning after the incident, Nalyssa Smith sat alone in her apartment, blinds drawn against the bright sunlight. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but she couldn't bear to look at it. The television played quietly in the background until a familiar scene appeared. Herself, shoving Caitlin Clark, replayed in slow motion as two sports commentators discussed it with serious faces. "This is unprecedented in recent WNBA history," one commentator said as Smith reached for the remote and turned it off. Her hands shook as she finally picked up her phone. Hundreds of notifications flooded her screen. Text messages from teammates, family members, her agent, news alerts about the incident, Instagram comments ranging from concern to outright hatred, a missed call from her mother. That one hurt the most. She opened her team's group chat first. "You okay?" her teammate had written last night. "Press is camped outside the practice facility. Don't come in today," the team captain had added this morning. Smith typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on a simple, "I'm sorry." It felt pathetically inadequate. When her phone rang, she jumped. Her agent, Tanya. "Tell me, what happened?" Tanya said as soon as Smith answered. "No hello, no how are you. Just straight to business." "I lost it," Smith whispered. I don't know what happened." "Well, the whole world saw what happened," Tanya replied, her voice tight with controlled frustration. "The league office has been calling me every 30 minutes. The team owners want to meet, and there are reporters outside your building." Smith walked to her window and peeked through the blinds. Sure enough, 3 news vans were parked across the street. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice small. "For now? Nothing. Stay inside. Don't post anything online. Don't talk to anyone except me. The league has put you on administrative leave pending their investigation." "And Clark? How is she?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Concussion and a sprained wrist. Out for at least 2 weeks." The knowledge hit Smith like a physical blow. She sank onto her couch, head in her hands. "I never meant to hurt her." "Intent doesn't matter much right now," Tanya said, her voice softening slightly. "Listen, I've arranged for you to talk to someone, a sports psychologist who works with athletes under pressure. You've been dealing with too much for too long." Smith wanted to argue that she was fine, that it was just one bad moment, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself nodding even though Tanya couldn't see her. "Okay," she managed. After hanging up, Smith made herself a cup of tea, hands still trembling. A notification popped up. The WNBA had released an official statement about the incident. She tapped on it, heart racing. "The WNBA takes any physical altercation between players extremely seriously," the statement read. "Nalyssa Smith has been placed on immediate administrative leave while a thorough investigation takes place. We wish Caitlin Clark a speedy recovery and will provide updates as they become available." Cold corporate words that couldn't capture the chaos she felt inside. Her doorbell rang, making her spill tea on her sweatpants. For a moment she considered ignoring it, but then came a familiar voice. "Nalyssa, it's Coach. Let me in." She opened the door to find Coach Taylor, looking tired and disappointed. Without a word, he stepped inside, closing the door firmly behind him. "The vultures are circling," he said, shaking his head. "Had to tell them I was the building inspector to get past them." Despite everything, that almost made Smith smile. Almost. "The team's releasing a statement in an hour," Coach said, sitting heavily on her couch. "They wanted me to run it by you first." "That bad, huh?" "They're supporting you as a person while condemning your actions. Standard PR language." He rubbed his face. "What I want to know is what really happened out there. That wasn't the player I know. The simple kindness in his voice broke something in her. The tears she'd been holding back since last night finally came. I don't know, she said through sobs. Everything's been too much. The pressure, the comparisons to Clark, the endorsement deals, social media. I haven't slept well in months. And when she knocked me down, something just snapped. Coach nodded slowly. I should have seen it. The signs were there. It's not your fault. It's not entirely yours either. He handed her a tissue from the box on her coffee table. Look, this is bad, I won't sugarcoat it, but it doesn't have to define your whole career. Later that day, after Coach left, Smith worked up the courage to check social media. The video had gone viral with millions of views across platforms. Some comments defended her, pointing out the physical nature of the game and suggesting Clark had been getting preferential treatment from refs all season, but most were harshly critical, calling for her suspension or worse. The Chicago Sky had released their own statement, expressing concern for Clark and calling the incident deeply troubling. Clark herself hadn't commented publicly. As evening fell, Smith's mother finally arrived, letting herself in with the spare key. She took one look at her daughter sitting in the dark apartment and switched on the lights. Enough hiding, she said firmly. We're going to face this. I don't know if I can, Smith admitted. Her mother sat beside her, taking her hands. You did something terrible, but you're not a terrible person. There's a difference. Tell that to everyone calling me a monster online. People online don't know you. I do. She squeezed Smith's hands. What you do next matters more than what you did yesterday. That night, with her mother's help, Smith drafted a statement of her own, not a corporate apology written by PR professionals, but something real and raw. She admitted her actions were inexcusable, took full responsibility, and promised to seek help for the issues that led to her outburst. She specifically apologized to Clark, her teammates, and the fans. As she hit post on the statement, Smith knew it was just the first small step on a very long road. Tomorrow would bring the league's decision about her future. But for the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to believe there might actually be a future to worry about. The suspension. 3 days after the incident, Nalyssa Smith sat in a sleek conference room at the WNBA headquarters. The long table made her feel small. 5 league officials sat across from her, including the commissioner herself. Smith's agent Tanya sat beside her, occasionally touching her arm for reassurance. Mrs. Smith, we've reviewed the footage multiple times, the commissioner said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. We've spoken to witnesses, including your teammates, Coach Taylor, and members of the Chicago Sky organization. We've also taken into account your public apology and your previously clean record. Smith nodded, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She'd barely slept last night, rehearsing what she would say in this meeting. Now that the moment was here, all those practiced words vanished from her mind. However, the commissioner continued, what happened on that court crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. The WNBA must send a clear message that physical aggression of this nature has no place in our league. Smith's stomach dropped. She'd been preparing herself for the worst, but hearing it was still devastating. The league has decided to suspend you indefinitely, effective immediately. Indefinitely? Tanya spoke up. With all due respect, Commissioner, most suspensions come with a specific time frame. This isn't most suspensions, another official replied. Missing Smith's return will depend on several factors, including completed anger management and mental health counseling, community service, and a formal review by the league's conduct committee. Smith found her voice at last. I understand, and I accept the decision. The room seemed surprised by her calm acceptance. Perhaps they'd expected tears or arguments. But Smith had done her crying already. Now she just felt numb, and somewhere beneath that numbness, a strange sense of relief. At least now she knew what came next. On her way out of the building, reporters swarmed around her. Camera flashes blinded her as Tanya guided her toward their waiting car. Nalyssa, do you think the suspension is fair? Any message for Caitlin? Clark, will you appeal the decision? Smith paused for a moment. Tanya tugged her arm, whispering, "We prepared a statement. Just stick to that." But Smith stepped toward the microphones. "The suspension is fair," she said clearly. "I made a terrible mistake, and I take full responsibility for it. To Caitlin, my teammates, the fans, and the entire WNBA community, I'm truly sorry. I'll be working every day to earn back your trust." The press conference held by the Indiana Fever later that day was somber. The team's general manager stood at the podium, flanked by Coach Taylor and the team captain. "While we're disappointed by Nalyssa's actions, we support the league's decision," the GM said. "We also support Nalyssa as a person, as she takes the necessary steps to address the underlying issues that led to this incident. The Indiana Fever organization remains committed to creating a positive environment where players compete with intensity, but always with respect." That evening, talk shows across the country debated the suspension. Some former players called it excessive, pointing out that male athletes in other sports had received lighter punishments for similar or worse behavior. "The indefinite nature of it troubles me," one retired WNBA star commented. "Everyone deserves to know the path back." Others defended the decision. "The league had to take a stand," another analyst argued. "Women's basketball has always prided itself on sportsmanship. This sends the right message." Smith watched none of it. Instead, she packed up her apartment, preparing for a long absence. Her mother helped, carefully wrapping framed photos of Smith's college graduation and WNBA draft day. "Where will you go?" her mother asked, sealing a box with packing tape. "Home, if that's okay with you and Dad." Her mother nodded. "Your old room is waiting for you. Always has been." The next morning, as Smith loaded the last boxes into her car, her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, wary of reporters who had somehow obtained her personal contact information, but something made her press accept. "Hello? Nalyssa? This is Patricia Johnson." Smith recognized the name immediately. One of the league's first stars, now running basketball camps for underprivileged kids across the country. "Ms. Johnson," Smith said, surprised. "How did you get my number?" "I have my ways," Patricia chuckled. "Listen, I saw what happened. I've been where you are." "You have?" Smith couldn't recall Patricia Johnson ever being suspended. "Not exactly the same, but I hit rock bottom in my third season. Different circumstances, same feeling of watching everything you've worked for slip away." Smith leaned against her car, suddenly needing the support. "How did you come back from it?" "One day at a time. And not alone." Patricia paused. "That's why I'm calling. I'd like to mentor you through this if you're open to it." For the first time in days, Smith felt a flicker of hope. "I'd like that very much." 2 weeks into her suspension, Smith began a routine. Mornings were for physical training, keeping her body ready for an eventual return. Afternoons were for therapy sessions where she slowly unpacked years of pressure and perfectionism. Evenings were for helping at her old high school, coaching the girls' basketball team. The media attention gradually faded. New controversies took her place in the headlines, but occasionally she'd see an update about Clark's recovery or speculation about when, or if, Smith would return to the league. 1 month in, Smith received a package from Patricia. Inside was a journal with a note. "Write it all down. The good, the bad, and everything in between. This is how we make meaning from our mistakes." Smith began writing that night. At first, just a few sentences about her day, then longer entries about her feelings, her fears, her hopes. She wrote about the shame that still woke her up at night, and the small victories in therapy. She wrote about missing the game so much it physically hurt. 2 months into her suspension, Smith did her first public appearance, a community service event at a local youth center. She expected whispers and side eyes. Instead, she found kids who just wanted to learn basketball from a pro. One little girl asked for an autograph, looking up at Smith with pure admiration. "Why does she want my autograph?" Smith asked a center. "Volunteer." "After what I did?" The volunteer shrugged. Kids don't hold grudges like adults do. Plus, you're still her hero. Heroes make mistakes too. That night, Smith added a new entry to her journal. Today, I remembered why I play. Not for contracts or fame or to be better than anyone else, just for the pure joy of the game. 3 months in, the hardest part wasn't the absence of basketball or the uncertainty of her future. It was the isolation from her teammates. They'd send occasional texts, but it wasn't the same as being in the locker room, on the bus, in the trenches together. Until one rainy Tuesday when her doorbell rang. Smith opened it to find her team captain standing there with pizza boxes, and the entire season of a show they'd been watching together before everything fell apart. Team movie night, her captain said simply. Just because you're not on the court doesn't mean you're not on the team. That night, surrounded by teammates who chose to stand by her despite everything, Smith realized something important. Her suspension wasn't just a punishment. It was also a chance to rebuild, not just her reputation, but herself. The person she wanted to be when she finally returned to the game she loved. The reconciliation 2 months into her suspension, Nalyssa Smith sat in her therapist's office, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. The room was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and plants in the corners. Dr. Rivera had become a steady presence in Smith's life, someone who listened without judgment. "There's something I need to do," Smith said after they'd gone through their usual check-in. "But I'm scared." "What is it?" Dr. Rivera asked, her voice calm. "I want to talk to Caitlin Clark, face to face." Smith looked up. "I need to apologize to her properly, not through the media or a PR statement, just person to person." Dr. Rivera nodded slowly. "That's a big step. What makes you feel ready now?" "I'm not sure I'm ready," Smith admitted, "but I keep thinking about it. I can't move forward until I do this." They spent the rest of the session talking through what this meeting might look like, how Smith would handle it if Clark refused, what she wanted to say, how she would manage her emotions. That evening, Smith drafted an email to Clark. She rewrote it 7 times before settling on something simple and direct. "I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I'd like to meet with you briefly to apologize in person. Completely understand if you're not comfortable with this." She stared at the send button for a full 5 minutes before pressing it. Once it was done, she felt sick with anxiety. What if Clark ignored her? What if she made things worse? 3 days passed with no response. Smith tried to focus on her routine, training, therapy, community service, but kept checking her phone. On the 4th day, as she was leaving the youth center where she volunteered, her phone buzzed. "Okay, coffee shop on 6th Street, Tuesday at 10. Just you." Smith read Clark's message 10 times, her heart racing. This was really happening. Tuesday morning, Smith arrived 30 minutes early, choosing a table in the back corner of the coffee shop. She ordered a tea she didn't drink, watching the door nervously. At exactly 10 hours, Clark walked in. She looked different from the last time Smith had seen her, on the court, in uniform. Today, she wore jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She spotted Smith immediately and walked, over her expression guarded. "Thank you for coming," Smith said, standing awkwardly. Clark sat down without a word, just a brief nod. Up close, Smith could see the wariness in her eyes. "How's your wrist?" Smith asked. It was a stupid question, but she didn't know where else to start. "Healed," Clark replied. "Back to normal now?" "That's good." Smith took a deep breath. "Look, I know this probably won't make anything better, but I am so deeply sorry for what I did. There's no excuse for it. None." Clark watched her carefully. "Why did you do it?" The direct question caught Smith off guard. She'd prepared for anger, maybe even forgiveness, but not this simple curiosity. I was in a bad place. For months, really. The pressure, the comparisons between us that the media kept making. Not sleeping. Anxiety through the roof." Smith shook her head. "But that's just context, not an excuse. The truth is I lost control. And that's on me." 100%. Clark sipped her coffee, considering this. I used to think you hated me? What? No, I never. Let me finish, Clark said firmly. I thought you hated me because of all the attention I was getting, but after what happened, I read some interviews with your teammates. They talked about how hard you've always been on yourself, how you hold yourself to impossible standards. Smith felt exposed, hearing her private struggles described so accurately. I recognize that, Clark continued, because I do the same thing. Different ways maybe, but same problem. For a moment, neither spoke. The coffee shop bustled around them, customers coming and going, unaware of the conversation happening in the corner. I don't expect your forgiveness, Smith finally said. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. I didn't come here to forgive you, Clark replied, and Smith's heart sank. But then Clark added, I came to understand. What was meant to be a brief apology turned into a 3-hour conversation. They talked about the pressures of being in the spotlight, the toll that social media took on their mental health, the impossible expectations placed on female athletes. We're supposed to be fierce competitors but always perfectly composed, Clark said at one point. Make every shot but never look too confident, be strong but not intimidating. And do it all while being paid a fraction of what men make, Smith added. They shared stories from college, from their rookie years, moments when the pressure nearly broke them. Gradually, the tension between them eased. They weren't exactly friends, too much had happened for that, but they were finding common ground neither had expected. As they finally prepared to leave, Clark looked at Smith directly. This doesn't fix everything. You know that, right? Smith nodded. I know, but it's a start. Clark hesitated, then added, I hope you get to play again. The league's better with you in it. Those words stayed with Smith for days afterward. She wrote about the meeting in her journal, trying to capture every detail before it faded from memory. One phrase from Clark kept repeating in her mind, it's a start. The following week, Smith's agent called with news. Clark had spoken to some reporters after a game, and when asked about Smith, she'd said, We've talked. It was a productive conversation. I believe in second chances, and I think Nalyssa deserves hers. That simple statement changed the narrative almost overnight. Sports commentators who had been harshest on Smith began discussing the possibility of her return. Social media, which had been a place of torment for Smith, now had people defending her. Smith felt a responsibility to honor Clark's unexpected support. She doubled down on her community work, launching a program at the youth center focused on emotional regulation and sportsmanship for young athletes. She gave her first interview since the suspension, speaking candidly about mental health struggles in professional sports. What happened between Caitlin Clark and me wasn't just about one bad moment, she told the interviewer. It was the result of a system that often treats athletes like machines, not humans with real feelings and breaking points. The interview went viral, sparking conversations across the sports world. Other athletes began sharing their own mental health struggles. League officials reached out to Smith, asking her to consult on a new wellness program they were developing. Month after their coffee shop meeting, Smith and Clark released a joint statement. It called for unity and respect in women's basketball and announced their collaboration on a series of basketball clinics for girls that would emphasize both competitive excellence and sportsmanship. This is bigger than either of us, the statement read. It's about changing how we support athletes, especially women, and creating a healthier environment for the next generation. When a reporter asked Clark if she'd truly forgiven Smith, her answer was thoughtful. Forgiveness isn't just words. It's a process. We're both part of that process, and we're both committed to making something positive come from this situation. For Smith, those words meant everything. She'd gone from the lowest point in her life to finding purpose in her pain. The road back to the court was still long and uncertain, but for the first time she could see it stretching out before her. And somehow, the person she'd hurt most had become an unexpected ally in her journey toward redemption. The return, 6 months after the incident that changed her life, Nalyssa Smith sat in the commissioner's office once again. This time she wasn't alone. Her agent Tanya was there, along with Coach Taylor, her therapist Dr. Rivera, and Patricia Johnson, the former WNBA star who had become her mentor. "You've done everything we asked," the commissioner said, reviewing the thick file in front of her. "Completed the anger management program, attended therapy consistently, performed over 200 hours of community service. Your work with youth basketball programs has been particularly impressive." Smith nodded, trying to keep her emotions in check. 6 months ago, she'd sat in this same chair, hearing her career might be over. Today felt surreal. "The Conduct Committee has reviewed your case and your application for reinstatement," the commissioner continued. "Based on their recommendation and my own judgment, I'm prepared to lift your suspension, effective next week." Smith closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news. She'd dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, she felt overwhelmed. "There will be conditions," the commissioner added. "A 6-month probationary period, continued therapy, no technical fouls or ejections during that time. Do you understand and accept these terms?" "Yes," Smith said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Absolutely." Later, as they left the building, Coach Taylor put an arm around her shoulders. "Welcome back, kid." "Thanks, Coach." Smith blinked back tears. "For everything. For not giving up on me." That night, the news of her reinstatement broke. Her phone exploded with messages from teammates, friends, and family. Even some fans reached out with words of support. Her parents drove in from out of town to celebrate with her. It was the first time Smith had seen her father cry. "So proud of you," he said, embracing her tightly. "Not just for coming back, but for how you handled everything when you were down." The Indiana Fever announced her return with a simple press release, followed by a video on social media showing Smith's empty locker, then her hands placing a framed photo inside, not of her achievements, but of the youth basketball team she'd been coaching. Her first practice back with the team was awkward at first. Some teammates were immediately welcoming with hugs and jokes about how they'd kept her spot warm. Others were more reserved, watching her cautiously. Smith understood. Trust had to be rebuilt. "Take it one day at a time," the team captain advised her after practice, "that they'll come around." The schedule makers had a flair for drama. Smith's first game back would be against the Chicago Sky, Caitlin Clark's team. When Smith learned this, she called Clark. "They're going to make this into a circus," she warned. "Every camera will be on us." "Let them," Clark replied. "We know what's real." In the days leading up to the game, sports networks ran endless segments analyzing the rivalry. They showed the incident on loop, followed by clips from their joint basketball clinics. Reporters asked teammates, coaches, and other players for predictions about how the two would interact. Through it all, Smith focused on her preparation. She had missed half a season of play. Her body was in shape from training, but game readiness was different. She stayed late after practices, working on her shooting, her footwork, her timing. The night before the game, she couldn't sleep. She paced her apartment, finally sitting down with her journal, the one Patricia had given her months ago. She reread entries from her darkest days, amazed at how far she'd come. Then she wrote a new entry. "Tomorrow isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about proving to myself that I can be the player I want to be, fierce but controlled, competitive but respectful. Whatever happens, I'm grateful for this second chance." Game day arrived with a buzz of excitement. The arena was packed, tickets having sold out within minutes of going on sale. As Smith went through warm-ups, she felt the weight of countless eyes on her. She focused on her breathing, on the familiar feel of the ball, on the squeak of her shoes against the polished court. In the locker room before tip-off, Coach Taylor kept his pre-game talk simple. "Play basketball, that's all, just play basketball." When the announcer called Smith's name in the starting lineup, the crowd reaction was mixed. Cheers from Fever fans, boos from some others, and a strange, expectant hush from many. Smith jogged onto the court, acknowledging her teammates but keeping her eyes downcast. Then it was time. The players took their positions for the jump ball. Smith found herself face-to-face with Clark for the first time since their coffee shop meeting. In that moment, with cameras zooming in and the crowd holding its breath, Clark did something unexpected. She reached out her hand. "Good game," she said simply. Smith took her hand, grateful for the gesture. "Good game." The referee threw the ball up, and just like that, they were playing basketball again. The game was fast-paced and physical. Smith missed her first 3 shots, nerves clearly affecting her aim. But a solid defensive play in the second quarter seemed to settle her. She blocked a shot, grabbed the rebound, and made a perfect outlet pass that led to a fast break score. Gradually, the focus shifted from the narrative to the actual game, which was turning into a thriller. By the fourth quarter, it was tied with both teams trading baskets. Smith was playing well, not spectacularly, but solidly. She was finding her rhythm. With 4 minutes left, Clark drove to the basket. Smith stepped up to defend, their bodies colliding. Clark fell hard and the arena went silent. The memory of their last encounter suddenly fresh again. For a split second, Smith froze. Then, without hesitation, she extended her hand to help Clark up. It was a small gesture, one that happens countless times in every basketball game. But in this context, it carried the weight of their entire shared history. Clark took her hand, allowing Smith to pull her to her feet. They exchanged a brief nod before returning to the game. The crowd, sensing the significance of the moment, erupted in applause. The Chicago Sky ended up winning by 3 points. After the final buzzer, as players from both teams mingled on the court, Smith approached. "Clark, one more time." "Nice game," she said. "You haven't lost a step." "Neither have you," Clark replied. Then, with a small smile, she added, "See you in the playoffs?" "Count on it." Later, in the post-game press conference, reporters predictably focused on the interactions between the two players rather than the game itself. "Can you describe what it felt like to be on the court with Caitlin Clark again?" one asked. Smith considered the question carefully. "It felt like basketball," she said finally. "That's what both of us love most. That's what we're here for." Another reporter pressed, "Do you feel this chapter is now closed?" "I don't think of it as closing a chapter," Smith replied. "More like starting a new one. What happened will always be part of my story. It changed me. But it doesn't define me or my relationship with Caitlin or my career going forward." In the locker room afterward, though the team had lost, there was a sense of something gained. Smith's teammates surrounded her, offering encouragement about her performance, treating her just like any other player after a tough loss. It was exactly what she needed. As she packed up her gear, the team captain sat down beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly," Smith zipped up her bag. "Grateful. I thought I might never get to feel this again, even the disappointment of losing." "Well, get used to it," her captain said with a grin, "because you're back now for real." That night, Smith received a text from Patricia Johnson. "Watched the game. Proud of you. This is just the beginning." Smith smiled, knowing it was true. The road ahead would have its challenges. Some fans would never forgive her. Some commentators would always bring up the incident when discussing her career. But today had shown her something important. She could play the game she loved without being defined by her worst moment. She was Nalyssa Smith, WNBA player. But more importantly, she was Nalyssa Smith, a person who had fallen, faced her mistakes, and found the strength to rise again. And that, she realized, was a victory bigger than any game.